Okay, so we are so excited that Steve Petty is here with us. He's our youth policy advocate, and he's going to be talking to us about legislative advocacy today. He is just such an awesome mind and a great sense of humor, and we really enjoy him here at the Commission on Children and Youth. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pull up his presentation, and let me make sure you all can see that actually. Bear with me. Hold on, technical issues. Share my screen. There we go. Okay. All right. And so you all are on mute, and we will have time at the end to answer some questions. But right now, I'm going to pass it on over to Steve, who's going to take us away with this webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad you could join us. And as Jen mentioned, I'm Steve Petty. I'm Youth Policy Advocate for the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. And that I serve as the legislative liaison for the agency while the legislature is in session, and I also am the director of the Youth Transitions Advisory Council. And so I have this presentation here, and when I originally did this presentation, it was for a 2-hour time slot. So I'm going to skip some of it, condense it where I can, and I think Jen is going to share it with you at a later date, and you can still use the links. I checked all of those today. They're all still live, so they'll be good. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I want to talk about the Tennessee legislative process, and I apologize for the political science majors out there who are going to have to endure just a few minutes of this, but I think there's a lot of things people take for granted. So we'll go on. We are currently in the 111th Tennessee General Assembly, and it convened in January. It was the first Tuesday in January. I don't think it was the 9th. I think it was the 8th, but I'll stand to be corrected there. And it should be the 2019 regular session. And each General Assembly lasts 2 years. All the House members, and there are 99 House members, 33 Senate members. All of the representatives serve 2-year terms. So there's always some turnover. So you essentially have a new General Assembly every 2 years. State senators serve 4-year terms. And so half of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. So you have the rotating bodies that create a new General Assembly every 2 years. Currently, the Republicans have a supermajority in both chambers, and the Senate has 26 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 1 independent, and the House has 73 Republicans and 26 Democrats. So what that means is that the Republicans control both bodies, and they control the agenda, they control the committees, they control the floor, and so it's very difficult for the Democrats to get any of their agenda passed, and very easy for the Republicans. So in January, the 111th General Assembly, they organized their bodies by electing their leaders. In the House, that's the Speaker of the House. In the Senate, it is the Lieutenant Governor. And the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor have broad powers. They appoint the committee chairs. They appoint the members of the committees. And also by joint convention, where all the legislators meet as a single body, they also elect the Comptroller of the Treasury, the State Treasurer, and the Secretary of State. Now, any member may file legislation House members are limited to 15 bills each. The chairs of the committees can file 20 bills each. As I've found so far, that seems to only be committee bills that they have an additional 5 bills to file. It's not just any bill the chairman wants to file. There is a filing deadline. Generally, it will be around the last week of January or the first week of February. This year, it was the first week of February, and all the bills must have a companion bill in the other chamber. So each House bill has a corresponding Senate bill, and both of those bills have to be filed in identical form, meaning they have to have the same language in both bills, and they have to pass in identical form. In the first regular session of a General Assembly, there's usually around 1,450 bills filed, and that's 99 times 15. This year, there were a few more bills filed. I think it was 1,499 in one chamber, and I can't remember what the other one had. But it's important to remember that bills have a 2-year life. So anything that's not dealt with in the first year of a General Assembly can be brought up in the second year of a General Assembly. And there is one exception that's not used very often. If a bill goes to the floor and it receives a majority negative vote, meaning there are 50 or more votes against, then the members can file a motion of rejection, and they can make that entire code section be closed for the rest of the General Assembly. So members make sure they have the votes before they go to the floor, because it's just too risky to go up there and not get enough, or actually get a negative vote on your bill. Okay. Let's see. Oh, just click on this up here. There you go. Okay, I'm going to take you through a few web pages that are on the Tennessee that the Tennessee General Assembly has, and the Tennessee General Assembly was very early in the game, getting on the internet and streaming their committee meetings. I'm going to show you some of the other things that are available. Here you can look up the members of both bodies. You can have all the Senate members here, and they all have their own page. There, Senator Bailey has on his cowboy hat. But available on their page, you have contact information, both in their Nashville office at Court Hall and also with the district address. You can find out who their committees are, or what their committees are, and there's usually some information about community involvement and some of the awards and things they may have received. And the same information is available on the House members. But primarily, if you're trying to contact a legislator, You have a link that you can email them with on the index page, and also their office number and their phone number. So you can call them. What I want everybody to pay attention to, up at the top menu, there's a link where you can find your legislator, and there's a map. So you do need to know, in general, where you live if you're going to use the map, but you can type your street address in there, and I won't share my street address, but these are the Senate maps. Let me go down to the House. The House has smaller districts, so it's a little bit trickier to get where you want to get. I'll try it. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Where I want to go. No. Okay, Mike, where are you? Oh. He's still Charlie Bomb. Well, there he is. This is my representative, Mike Sparks. I just spent some time with Mike Sparks shortly before coming to the webinar. And the question you want to ask is, would you buy a used car from this man? That's what he does for a living. He was one of the first people in Tennessee to sell used cars on the internet and was very successful doing that. And so you'll find things about your legislators that can be kind of surprising in some ways. But I haven't bought a car from Mike yet. I think I'm going to try him out next time I go to buy one. I wanted to show you on legislation. There are several ways to find a bill that you might be looking for. This is the way I use, is the index. It provides ranges of bill numbers, and you can click on the range, click on the bill, and it'll pull up a bill information page. And House Bill 1 is about authorizing sports betting in Tennessee, so that doesn't have anything to do with children. But I think this bill might have been passed in the Senate this morning. There was a comment that someone made that they hoped they could take the bill effective at 11 o'clock today, so we could get in on the pools for the NCAA. But they can't do that. So if you're doing any pools, just don't tell anybody. Let's see where I'm going now. Okay. I wanted to show you about bills. So you can read a copy of the bill from the website. They're all in PDF, printable form. And this is a pretty fleshed out bill. It's 23 pages. Many of the bills that are filed are one page, and they don't really provide a lot of information about what the sponsor is trying to do with the bill. But the most important thing to notice about the bills that are filed are this part here, where it says an act to amend Tennessee Code annotated. And this one is Title 4, Title 14, Title 38, Title 39, etc. And so this is a pretty tight caption. There's very few things that they could do with this bill other than gaming, perhaps. And of course, you can see that it affects a broad area of the code. But in Tennessee, the law requires that a bill cannot be any broader than its caption. And so what the caption does, it limits what they can do with the legislation to only those parts of the code that are highlighted in the caption. So in Washington, D.C., they don't have a rule like this, so they can take a bill and they can decorate it up like a Christmas tree. They can put everything on there. In Tennessee, you're limited by what you include in your caption, and that is the public's notice of what your intention to do with the legislation is. It's not the text of the bill down here there. All of the text is subject to amendment, of which most bills will be amended before they're passed out of the General Assembly. Yeah, I just want to get back to the presentation. Okay, and there's the bill information page. And there's the bill I used when I made this presentation, a bill we liked. Okay, here's some more about the process, and this is kind of inside baseball for folks, but just for your information. If you're going to advocate for legislation, you need to at least be familiar with the rules and the procedures, and you don't have to know the rules by heart, but you need to have a general idea of what can be done and what can't. For the most part, they follow Robert's Rules of Order, like most formal meetings do. Otherwise, they have their own rules in the Senate and the House both, and they're not the same. Jen, let's see, how do we get back to? Yeah, or not the web. I want to get to that handout that I sent you.
Oh, okay. 1 second, y'all.
That one, yes. Can everyone see this handout? It says how a bill becomes law in the General Assembly. Okay, they're saying yes. Okay, thanks. And I think this is actually, this handout was derived from a graphic in the Tennessean newspaper. I'm not sure how old it is, but it still applies, and it shows the path that legislation goes through to become law. And it's pretty standard procedure. Most bodies require requires a bill to pass on 3 readings to become law. That's done in Tennessee, but generally the first 2 don't count. Everybody votes for them, so they always pass on first and second consideration, and then they're referred to a standing committee. And the committee will hear the bill, and they will approve any amendments that are applied to the bill. In the House, they do voice votes, and the members can call for a roll call vote with a certain number of requests. In the Senate, they always do roll call votes on the bill. They will use a voice vote to approve amendments. The bills make their way through the legislature. And they're eventually passed with a majority of the members voting in the affirmative. And that requires 17 votes in the Senate and 50 votes in the House. And so, as the old saying goes, you can sell the dome off the Capitol with 17 votes in the Senate and 50 votes in the House. And that's not far from the truth. Go back to the... Okay, thank you, Jen. Okay. Okay, here we are. Now we're back on the page. I put links in the presentation to the House rules and to the Senate rules, and they are similar but not the same. I mentioned the part about the voice votes and the roll call votes. There are quirky little rules in both bodies that must be followed. There's also a link to the Tennessee Constitution down there. Oh, and I'll put it on this slide that Tennessee is considered a weak governor state because a simple majority can override the governor's veto. So if you have enough votes to pass a bill, then you can override the governor's veto. There's not very many vetoes issued in Tennessee. Okay, I'm going to just kind of scan the budget process. I'm going to include this in the presentation when Jen sends it out so you can read it more deeply. It's not unlike passing a bill because the budget is just the most important bill of the session. And as they will say, the legislature has three jobs when they come to Nashville. They have to pass a balanced budget. They have to fix everything they messed up last year, and they have to settle fights between. Well, the saying used to say between Memphis and Shelby County, but now it appears to be just Nashville. But there were several things going on in the budget process. Next year's budget process, they will start working on that sometime in July. So the budget process never stops. The departments will review their budget needs and make recommendations. They'll have a hearing in front of the governor who will use the information to make his budget decisions. The state funding board, which is made up of the governor, but usually the Commissioner of Finance and Administration serves in the governor's role there. The state constitutional officers, that is the Secretary of State, the Comptroller, and the state treasurer, they have hearings to determine how much revenue to expect the following year. The commissioners propose their budgets. the emphasis is placed on any improvements or reductions that each department wants to make. But the governor and the commissioner of finance administration pretty much make the final decisions. And it's important to remember that the basis for the upcoming budget is the budget that was just passed. So you're not starting from a blank piece of paper when they start the budget process. They take last year's budget and they start making the changes they need to make to improve state government. So after the decisions are made, the governor will make propose his budget to the legislature. It would come out on the same day as the State of the State address. This year, because we had a new governor, it was in March, the first Monday in March. Most years, it will be the first Monday in February. Oh. Okay, after the governor proposes the budgets, both the House and the Senate start having their budget hearings with all the departments. In the House, the Finance Committee does budget hearings. In the Senate, the budget hearings are conducted by the standing committees. TCCY had their budget hearing in the House Finance Committee last Wednesday, and we had our Senate budget hearing in the Health and Welfare Committee yesterday. And so issues are brought to the forefront in the discussions. The governor will propose what's called the administration amendment, where he makes changes that he's agreed to in his proposed budget from the information that's continued to be collected from the departments and from the legislators. The House and Senate will each write their own budget, and then through legislative action or through informal negotiation, they will complete a final budget. And once again, it has to pass the House and pass the Senate in identical fashion, meaning it has to be word for word the same. And the governor of Tennessee has a line item veto. So the governor can veto a single item in the budget, but not without vetoing the entire bill. And it's also important to remember that no bill can become law unless it's funded in the budget. So anything that passes that has a fiscal cost that is not funded in the budget does not become law. Okay, I'm not going to go over the TCCY legislative process right now. We're going to be looking at some changes that are coming up. So I'll just point out a couple of things that probably will not change. Before they implemented the bill limits, and I think that was in 2013, there were no bill limits. It was called unlimited filing, and generally in the first year of a General Assembly, there were 2,200 bills filed, and in the second year, 2,000 additional bills. And at that time, Tennessee would usually, TCCY would usually identify 500 to 600 bills that we would put in our big tracking report, and that was about 25% of the bills. And then after they implemented the bill limits, well, I thought I was going to catch a break because there would be less bills. And there were less bills. There were only around 1,500 bills. You got to have a sponsor in the House and the Senate both. But TCCY still identifies 500 to 600 bills that we're going to track in our big report. And so now that's about 35% of the bills instead of 25% of the bills. And we use Tennessee Legislation Service to help us track the legislation. And all of our reports that we do on legislation are available on our website. And so I've included some links to our reports on the website. The big report we do with the 500 and 600 bills is we call that the legislative report. And then I do a spreadsheet with bills in it that actually has links to the bill information pages. And there's about 130 bills, give or take a few, in that spreadsheet. And we used to post our legislative guidance on the website, and we took that down last week, and we're going to kind of reformulate what we do with our legislative guidance. And then at the end of the year, I will do a legislative summary that will include all the bills in the big report that actually passed the General Assembly, regardless of whether we had any concerns about the bill or liked the bill. If it was in the 500 or 600 bill report and it passes, it'll be in the legislative summary, but nothing else. And also on the website are the TCCY budget recommendations. TCCY makes budget recommendations to the governor. We provide them to the legislators. They're due on or before September 1st every year. And so we'll be doing that in the summer. And Tennessee also, or TCCY, also has access to LexisNexis, and you can pull up online the entire Tennessee code through the link on the Tennessee or the TCCY webpage. And I use that frequently as opposed to printed books. I also want to mention that TCCY does a weekly legislative update by email that you can sign up for. And hopefully I've got the correct links in here in the presentation. But if you, the directions are pretty simple. You type listserv at listserv.tn.gov into your email, and the directions are to leave the subject line blank and type in the body of the message, subscribe TCCY, your first name and last name, and you'll start getting the weekly emails. Not included in this presentation, TCCY also is doing a federal information listserv that you can sign up for. And we've been doing this about a year, but we're still not very consistent on it. We hope to get better with that as time goes along. So I'll skip most of this about the TCCY legislative process. I covered the link where you can find your legislators, and I would suggest you just type your address in there instead of using the map. But it's important to know why you need to get to know your legislator. It's important, if you're going to have any influence on legislation, to establish a relationship with legislators. And the best way to start is with your legislator, because you're their constituent. They hope you will vote for them, and so it's very important what you think to them, or what you think to them. So anytime that you're trying to advocate for legislation, it's good to make contact with your House member and your Senate member. Just if just to let them know what you're doing and why you're there, and that you just wanted to stop in on them while you're uh, there. If you establish a relationship with them, then they'll be more comfortable talking with you. Uh, they will begin to recognize you not only as one of your constituents, but an expert in the field that you're working on. And it's always important to include, if you're talking to a legislator, uh, not only if you're one of their constituents, but let the member know whose constituent you are, and try to expand the relationship that you have with your member to some other members. And so it's also very important that you get to know the staff. And we're going to talk about making appointments later, but it's just incredibly important to have a good relationship with the staff member, because they're going to be the ones that find you the appointment when you're coming to visit at Cordell Hull. Now, if you're working on a piece of legislation, you need to attend the subcommittee and the committee when the legislation is being presented. If you're working on a piece of legislation, that's where you need to start meeting with the members of the subcommittee and with the full committee after that, to let them know about your issues. If you meet with legislators, it's always important to dress appropriately. And by dressing appropriately, I don't mean that you have to wear a suit or tie. You should probably dress professionally, but at least dress the way you would have to dress to go sit down at a restaurant and eat. Minimally do that. What I'm really talking about is, don't go to meet with members with your Vote Democrat t-shirt on. And by the same token, you probably shouldn't wear your Vote Republican t-shirt if you're meeting with a Democrat. Leave the elephant lapel pins at home. Wear something else, preferably something that represents you and who you're with. And that's what many of the actual lobbyists will do at the legislature. And everybody belongs to something, so you can put something on your lapel pin, but just avoid the political and issue-driven clothing. Now, a lot of people, when they're attending the legislature in mass, if you have groups that are protesting bills, they'll often wear the same color t-shirt or the same t-shirt just to create a sense of unity. So be careful what you're wearing at the legislature. You're whatever color. If you wear solid color, you might end up blending in with an issue that you don't care to be associated with. So just bear that in mind. Okay, when you're meeting with legislators, and I've just taken some information that TCCY compiles and dumped it into this PowerPoint. Most of this is available on the website under Advocacy Resources, and actually there's a lot there that I didn't include that time wouldn't allow, and I may not be as familiar with it. Some of it is getting a little long in the tooth, but it's, for the most part, still applicable. And it's pretty common sense stuff. Legislators are people too, and they want to be treated like other people want to be treated. Sometimes with a little more respect than other people are treated, but most people know how to win friends and influence people in their own life. So use those skills when you're talking to legislators. But just some basic facts here. Be honest, don't lie or mislead or misrepresent your opposition's position or your strength. your credibility is the most important thing you have at the legislature. Don't do anything that's going to jeopardize that. Don't promise anything you can't deliver. Don't make up answers if you're asked questions. If you don't know the answer, tell them and tell them you'll get right back to them. Your word is your bond. It's the most important thing you got. If you're honest, you'll at least receive some level of respect. Be friendly. We have an old saying here, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. Don't make a bitter enemy with a legislator because you disagree with him on one issue, because there may be an issue tomorrow where he's on your side. And so don't do anything that's going to block future relationship building based on one issue. And don't make threats. Look for your friends and allies in unusual places. And in politics, a friend is a politician who will help you when you need help. It doesn't matter whether they're a Democrat or a Republican or a liberal or a conservative. Even if that politician is against you 90% of the time, if they can help you now, take their help. And remember that don't grab the credit. It takes a lot of people to pass legislation, and nothing is impossible if it doesn't matter who gets the credit. And so I guess what I'm saying here is give the legislator the credit. Don't take the credit. Okay, decide on your priorities. Don't waste too much time trying to change people's mind who are publicly committed and to their position or openly opposed to yours. There are other legislators who are open or neutral, who are willing to listen to your concerns and may still be swayed to your agenda side of the agenda. So focus on those votes that you can get, and don't spend any time trying to get votes you're not going to get. And you should also remember to, keep meeting with your friends, because if you don't keep your friends' votes, it won't matter how many new votes you get from the other side of the issue. So always double back on your friends and make sure they're still your friends on the issue. And never forget to notice and thank anybody who gets you an appointment. When the staff gets you an appointment, make sure you thank them. Thank the legislator for taking the time to meet with you. If other legislators do stuff to help your bill, if they vote for your side, make sure you go back and thank them. Send them a thank you card if you get to speak with them. It's always helpful to use your best manners at the legislature. Another important point is don't get angry. This is very hard because there could be a lot of disappointment in working on legislation. Nobody wins them all. Nobody loses them all. And hopefully things are going to turn out for the best in the end, or as good as you can get it. So don't get mad at people. Get even. Vote. Be prepared. Know your issue. Know the other side's issue. Practice discussing it before you try to meet with legislators. Know what you're going to say and know what their responses are going to be before they make them. And of course, I've got it here, don't make sexist and racist remarks. I shouldn't have to say that, but I did. But there's other inappropriate things. Don't interrupt legislators when somebody else is talking to them. It may just be a lobbyist. He may have talked to them 10 times in the last week. Don't interrupt them. Just wait your turn. You can wait patiently outside of the conversation, and the legislators will notice you. Also, as I mentioned, there's a lot of disappointment sometimes. One description of lobbying is endless hours of boredom separated by moments of sheer terror. And no matter what happens, no matter how hard you work, no matter how good your arguments are, sometimes you're going to lose. So it's important to have some luck. Nothing gets passed without some luck. Try to avoid last-minute requests. Sometimes it's not possible, but as I've come to find out, you can get in trouble for this. So try not to do it unless it's absolutely necessary, and expect to get scolded if you do. Personal visits are the best way to communicate with legislators. If you definitely will need an appointment. When I first started this 20 years ago, you didn't really need appointments. You just walked up to the legislator's office. And at that time, there were just 200 lobbyists in Tennessee. So there were enough legislators to go around. But now there are around 600 lobbyists in Tennessee, maybe more. So appointment times are at a premium. So call early, call often. If I want appointments for next week, I need to get them done this afternoon, or I can give it up. Explain why you support and or oppose a bill. Use some objective information and data to promote your bill. Now, we have in here anecdotal information. And of course, little anecdotes are always interesting, but they're not necessarily helpful. And you can always tell a story, but make your stories more thematic and not personal. Don't tell a story about, this person that did this and had this happen to them. Tell a story about how situations involve and cause people to do things they don't like to do, or by the same token, don't allow people to do things they want to do, and make it very general and not about a particular person. Once again, be prepared to answer questions. If you don't know the answer, get the answer and follow up later. Don't make something up. And be patient. Okay, got something in here about writing letters, and I'll talk more about that later. I do have something in here about email, and I got a little few tips in here about the letters. Include your address. That's the most important things people are looking at. They want to know when, or they want to know if you're a constituent and if you're have potential to vote for them. And they're going to be much more concerned about your email than if you're just if you're emailing all the legislators. Don't expect many results from automated emails. When legislators or staff get the same email from 10 different people at the same time. They know what's going on. They're not fooling anybody. They'll respond to a genuine email, but mass marketing emails is just not helpful. They see right through it. But email is more acceptable now than it used to be. I'm sure there are still a lot of legislators don't read their emails, but generally they will print them off. The staff will print them off, and they'll go into a file on a bill or an issue, and they'll keep track of what their constituents say. It's important for everybody to know that most legislators get the majority of their calls about two things. That's taxes and guns. So if you call about something besides taxes and guns, they're going to pay attention because they're not going to get many calls about that. So it's good to include your concerns about children's issues because they just don't get a lot of contact from folks about that. Once again, I mentioned putting the home address, your phone number, and your email. Sending emails to Washington is the best way to reach a congressman or senator because, since 2001 and all the terrorist attacks and security concerns, they're like microwaving all the mail that goes to the Capitol now. And so it takes a long time for them to get it, and sometimes it's not in condition to read when they do get it. So emailing and faxing is a good idea, and you can just use regular mail for their home offices. You can also follow them on Twitter and Facebook. Most of them are on there now, and something my old boss used to do that I thought was a handy trick, she used to write a handwritten letter, then she'd take a picture of it, text it to the senators and congressmen. Okay, between sessions, legislators are still working, so sometimes they'll have study committees. I think there'll be more study committees this summer or fall. Sometimes they really do study. Sometimes they send your bill to summer study to kill it. So there are two different uses for summer study. But a lot of times they're spending time in their office in Nashville getting ready for the upcoming session. They're working on legislation. They're meeting with constituents and lobbyists. They're doing research. A lot of them have different committees, fiscal review committee, government operations committees that really meet year-round. So you can try to contact and make appointments with your legislators at the Capitol in the off-season if you're going to be down here. But the best way to contact them, I think I'm mixing a slide. Okay. I did miss a slide. What I want to tell everybody, the best place to reach your legislator is at home in their district. They all have jobs, of course, that they do when they're not at the legislature, but they all go to church, they go to the grocery store, they eat in restaurants. If you know your legislator and have a relationship with them, you can speak with them in your community, and it's going to make have a lot more effect than if you try to meet with them in Nashville. They meet with people like me in Nashville, and they don't really want to hear from us. They want to hear from you. So contact your legislator, and once again, please vote. And that's it.
All right, everybody. So we have about 5 minutes where we can take a few questions here. So I'm going to stop sharing our screen and I'm going to return back to the presentation. And you all can see here that we've got a chat box on your right. So I'm going to ask that anybody who has questions, go ahead and shoot us a chat. And then I'll read the question aloud for those who are joining us via telephone. So we'll give it a few minutes and we'll have some questions for Steve. Okay, so Connie Casha says to everybody, great information. I look forward to getting the PowerPoint. Thank you, Connie. Connie's a wonderful advocate. Any other questions?
There's not much in there that Connie doesn't already know.
That's true. That's true. Okay. Other questions? Give it just a minute in case somebody's typing. Okay. Oh, yeah. And so it says from Leah McMahon, it says, are the handouts going to be in the PowerPoint? Yes, we will make sure that handout that we brought up earlier, that it will be available in the PowerPoint, and then everything that Steve showed you on the website, he has links to in the PowerPoint.
And also under advocacy resources, a lot of the under advocacy resources on the TCCY page, a lot of the stuff about the emailing legislators, writing letters, doing visits, that stuff is in some documents at that link. And they're in PDF documents. You can print them off very easily. So be sure to do that. And also, if my contact information will be on the PowerPoint cover page, and you can feel free to send me a question or give me a call anytime you have a question. It is always a good idea to make a connection with the legislators' staff. And for some legislators, meeting with the staff can have just as much influence on legislation as the member, because a lot of them, I mean, generally, most of them have staff now that not only keep up with their legislation, they do make their appointments and things like that too. So getting to know legislator staff is integral if you're going to do this.
And for those on the phone, Steve was answering a question posted by Renee Wilson Simmons, asking if it was a good idea to make a connection with the legislator staff person to get connected. Okay. So I don't see any more questions popping in. I want to give a real thanks to Steve for taking time out of his day to provide this for us. I mean, I just find every time Steve talks, I either find it funny or incredibly useful. So this is a complicated process with a lot of subtleties and nuances, and having somebody with this experience is just incredibly helpful for those of us who haven't done it for very long. So Steve, thank you again. And you all, this will be recorded, or it's being recorded right now, and I will make it available to you all shortly after we finish up here. Next month, we will have Child Trends joining us to talk about trauma-informed school policies and practices and their whole child focus in school culture. And so they have actually done a 50-state review, and I'm excited to say that Tennessee actually did pretty well on a lot of their indicators, in large part thanks to the restorative justice practices or restorative practices that have been happening in schools, the focus on school social work, the focus on adverse childhood experiences, and just the incredible leadership and work done by the Department of Education. So please feel free to join us for that. And Treva wonders who will be providing the training next month. It's going to be Child Trends. They are a national organization that helps us better understand children's issues. So I will be sending information about that out following this. So you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and we appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next time.